If you like this video, be sure to hit like, follow, and subscribe. So there's a new article out in The Express, which is a UK-based paper. It tends to be on the sort of the right or center-right, but I think most people would say it's on the right. So, take that as you may. And the reason it's interesting is it's the first time that any article has shown Donald Trump in the lead in the popular vote. And here the title says, Donald Trump is heading for a second presidential victory, poll shows. Now, obviously this is not indicative of the average polls. If you go to RCP and you look at the average polling right now for the popular vote, you'll see that Biden's up 8.3%, okay? So in most polls, if you average them out, Biden is leading the popular vote by 8.3%. What's interesting about this article, what's eye-catching about it, is that there is an individual pollster who actually has Donald Trump in the lead for the popular vote. Now, that's a highly unlikely scenario to anybody who's been poll watching, but apparently a pollster has determined that. So it says here, Donald Trump is on course to win the U.S. presidential election with a 3-point lead over Joe Biden, a shock poll suggests. And it says, in the latest monthly Democracy Institute DI or Sunday Express poll, so this is a right-wing poll, President Trump has 48% of the popular vote support over the former vice president's 45%, so that's a 3% lead. In the key swing states, the gap is even bigger, says this poll, with 49% for Trump to 42% for Biden, giving the president a 7-point lead. The DI polls have consistently shown more positive results for the president than other surveys. So these are sort of the more right-wing surveys, if you will. While most suggest a Democrat lead, the monthly DI polls have been more favorable to Trump. DI showed him ahead last month and even further ahead now. It's carried out its poll by contacting a weighted sample of 1,500 people and playing them a series of recorded questions. They answered via their telephone keypads. So here, if you wanted to say, well, why on earth did this poll do any differently? This is a very different form of polling. Usually you call someone up and you ask them, hi, could you tell me which political candidate you're voting for? But to do it via telephone keypads is kind of interesting because you may think, well, maybe if they don't hear the person's voice, the person's more likely to tell the truth. Who knows? Or they just called a lot of Republicans up. But polling by the Institute has previously accurately predicted both the 2016 U.S. election result and Brexit. Okay, so I hadn't read that line before, but that's interesting to know. This particular institute did get the 2016 election, which was an upset to all of the other pollsters, correct, and Brexit. So either, in both cases, obviously the right one. So if you took any poll and just weighted it 20% in favor of the Republicans or the right, you would have also gotten these three elections, or at least 2016 and Brexit, correct. So, take it with a grain of salt. If you trust this pollster, then we'll continue. And if you don't, then I guess just listen on, but don't trust the pollster in that case. Sean Spicer, the former White House press secretary under President Trump, has suggested that the difference is down to people being willing to vote for Trump, but less keen to admit doing so. It appears most U.S. voters have made up their minds, with 3% of Trump voters and 9% of Biden supporters suggesting they could have a change of heart on polling day, November the 3rd. Patrick Basham, director of the Democracy Institute, said, quote, in any political campaign, there's a moment that tells you which way the electoral wind is blowing. That moment arrived on Wednesday. Joe Biden restated his support for peaceful protests, but crucially condemned the violence that has come to dominate the months-long nationwide protest movement. Quote, when a candidate changes his tune 3/4 of the way through a race, it is not because he knows he holds a winning hand. He does so because the electoral ground is shifting beneath his feet. According to the poll, law and order is the top political issue, with 37% putting it as the most important, followed by 27% for the economy. And so that's the article, I guess. These are all just ads over here. So that's the article. I mean, again, the poll was Democracy Institute / Sunday Express poll, and it has President Trump with 48% of popular support against Joe Biden's 45%. And so for those of you who have been looking at these polls, have been seeing Biden winning, maybe you've put money on Biden, dare I say, in betting pools or something of that nature, or maybe you're intending to put more for Joe Biden or more for President Trump. This poll, the fact that there is even one poll that is suggesting that maybe Trump is winning the popular vote, which is frankly a little bit of a ridiculous notion because both the coasts, if you think about that populous northeast coast and that populous west coast of America, that's where the population is. You know, you're talking about California, New York, etc., Boston. That's where all of the population of the U.S. is, including and Chicago, right? So these are the major cities. And of all the major cities, the only major city I can think of that isn't heavily Democrat is maybe Miami, possibly. But I think it is actually a heavily Democrat city. At least the city is. Maybe the surrounding area isn't, because Florida is sort of tipping toward the Republicans a little bit more this election than it was in 2016. But you know, every city that you can just sort of come up with, a major city in the United States, these are Democrat cities. So the population centers are definitely all Democrat, or in majority Democrat. So the idea that somehow the country is voting so strongly for Trump that it outweighs, you know, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, etc., is kind of hard to believe. But you know, there it is. There's the poll. They claim to have been right in Brexit and in 2016. And take that as you may. So hopefully you found this interesting, and if you did, give it a like, give it a follow, give it a subscribe, and thanks for watching.